Welcome to Cooking at Nanook Lodge, and today we're going to tackle homemade pasta. At its simplest, pasta is water and flour. I'm going to use eggs because I like to make an egg pasta. I first learned to make pasta back when I was the chef at Muffalo restaurant. It was the first thing we had to do every morning was go in and roll all the fettuccine and make it. And we used eggs and semolina flour. Now you can look up a lot of cookbooks or look at recipes on the internet and it's eggs and all-purpose flour, and that would work fine too. I like the semolina. It's just gives it a little bit more denseness to the pasta, kind of like a little bit more chewiness. So the Italians call al dente, or to the tooth, to the bite. So I always use semolina for my flour. But if you don't have that, you don't have to go out and get it. You can just use all-purpose. It'll just be a little bit more light, which is totally fine when you're going to make something like fettuccine. There are a couple ways to make pasta. I'm going to show you the old hand traditional way where I'm going to dump the flour out, put the eggs in the middle, and then start kneading it all together and bring it into a ball and then kneading it by hand. But you certainly can do all of this in a stand mixer. And frankly, that's how I do it all the time because it's just easier on your hands, faster to let the machine do the work. But I want to show you the old traditional way today so that you can do it at home if you want to, have some fun. Here's all you're going to need to make pasta. And frankly, honestly, you don't even need this. I think this is maybe $40 or $50. It's an Atlas pasta maker. I've had it for probably 25 years. It's a workhorse hand crank. You can buy electric crank. You can put an attachment on the end of your KitchenAid and pass it through electrically. There's a lot of different ways. And if you don't have any of those tools, you can roll it out with a rolling pin and then cut it into strips by hand. It won't be quite as uniform as running it through this pasta maker, but it'll make great fettuccine or pappardelle or whatever you want. I've got the semolina flour here. I've just got a little all-purpose flour because that's what I'm going to use as my dusting so that the pasta doesn't stick together. And I've got some eggs. You can add olive oil. Some people like to add just a pinch of salt, which I just don't ever do because I like to salt my water. But you can look at a lot of different recipes and fool with it yourself. Choose the way you want to make it. I've poured my flour on the counter and I've got my eggs. I beat them together. You can probably watch all sorts of TikTok videos or whatever and people just crack the eggs in the middle there. But I actually like to put them in a bowl. That way if I get a shell, it's much easier to fish out. It doesn't get stuck to stuff. And then they're all beaten and ready to go. So you're just going to pour it in there, sort of like that. Whoop, and then just start mixing it together. Just like that. I didn't make a big enough well, did I? Ha! It's okay. It'll all come together. It looks a little shaggy right now, but keep working on it. It will all pull together for you. Don't worry. You can see how it's all just coming together. It's pretty stiff. It will relax eventually, but you want to just knead this now. So push it out, turn it around, pull it together. Just keep playing with it for about 6 minutes. See why I let the mixer do a lot of the work? The pasta dough's all come together. I've been kneading it for a little while. It's still pretty stiff, but what we want to do is allow that to relax for about 30 minutes. I like to kind of put it into a log and then semi-flatten it because eventually I'm going to have to flatten it pretty good to get it into the first roller. So we're going to wrap it with some plastic wrap and then we're just going to let it sit on the counter for 30 minutes. It allows all of the glutens and the flour to kind of come together and then relax out again. It'll make it much easier to put through the pasta maker without tearing it. Our pasta's been resting for about 35 minutes now. It can rest longer, doesn't matter. At least 30. I'm going to unwrap it and I'm going to cut it in half and rewrap one piece, one half. Just to keep it from not drying out. Then we really want to flatten this. I've got my roller set on number 1, which is maybe not quite a quarter of an inch wide. And so you got to get this whole thing to go there. And the thinner it is with your hands like this, the less it'll tear. And then let the rollers do the work. So you can see I've got it pretty flat. I'm going to just crimp the front edge so it's even thinner, and we're going to start to roll it through. One nice big long piece. And before I flour it, I'm just going to send it through again. The goal is to really get sort of an even edge and a nice long smooth sort of rectangle. As we turn the rollers down even smaller and thinner to make the thin pasta, we want it to go through really evenly. Might even go a third time. Don't worry about the edges. As this pushes and gets longer, they'll come together. But now I've got a nice, even piece. I'm going to turn this down from 1 to 2. And now I'm going to flour it just a little bit. We don't want it to stick to itself. And I kind of just roll it up on itself like this. Set it on the cutter bar. Roll the next piece through. It'll feel like it's rolling really easily, and it is. You really want to take it step by step. Just keep making it thinner. Maybe a little bit more flour. You can see where you need flour and where you don't. This. I'm on number 3 now. You can see it's getting longer and a little more thin. I'm going to flip it over, make sure the other side is floured too. Longer yet. So now I'm on number 4. And you can take your pasta however thin you want. I at least go to 5. And then depending on what I'm going to use the pasta for, might take it to 6, might not. You can see how this is getting pretty long, and it'll continue to go like that. So if you want to get to a point, you just cut it off. This is called a bench knife or a dough cutter. And then you can kind of just stack it up like this. Set it off to the side. Now, this is still pretty thick. I've got it on 5. This is actually good if you want to have a nice kind of thick lasagna. We're going to take it to 6, which is where I go when I want to do ravioli. But 5 might be a good ravioli thickness too. These are great for homemade lasagna. I always make lasagna, homemade noodles, and they don't have to be pre-cooked because this is fresh pasta. It'll absorb the moisture from the marinara or the meat sauce or whatever you're using for lasagna. And so super simple, but it also makes a really delicious lasagna that it's got some nice richness with the egg pasta in there. I just untucked that so it doesn't get stuck going back in. You can see I'm getting out pretty long and fairly thin. This is as far as I'll go because I'm making fettuccine for dinner tonight. And here you want to make sure you put a little more flour on. So you can see we've got this much folded up, and it's literally a quarter of the pasta we made, because don't forget we've got this other one that's just rolled but too thick. We have this whole other half to do. So now it's thin enough that I'm going to cut it into pasta noodles. My pasta maker has 2 sides. Thicker or wider fettuccine noodles, and then smaller, thinner, and that would make like a linguine. But today we're going to make fettuccine. We might make a little of both. So then I come to the other side and I start feeding it through. And there we have some beautiful, beautiful fettuccine. Here again, however long you want to cut it. I'm going to cut mine just about like that. And then just lay it out over here. I'm gonna grab a sheet pan. I'm gonna lay it out in strips just to let it dry for just a little bit, and then I'll tighten it all up into nests, and then we can store it in the fridge. So then we'll go back. We'll roll this thinner. We'll come back to our other piece. We'll finish all our pasta. I've got half my fettuccine done and laid out. Sprinkle a little bit more flour over here. Just kind of blend it in like that. We don't want this to stick together, but we do want it to air dry for just a little bit so it doesn't get really sticky and gummy. There you go. We'll get the other half all rolled out. Got a beautiful tray of fettuccine. You can see I've floured it enough so that it didn't stick to each other, and it's been drying. So from here I like to just take, maybe about that much, and I just make it, turn it into little nests by just doing that. Then it's easy to just grab sort of a portion at a time, or maybe two of these will make a portion depending on if you're doing a preemie or you want to do a whole meal out of pasta. This also will freeze really well. Put it in the fridge, let it get nice and cold, put it between some parchment paper, put it in a really tight Ziploc bag. You can throw it in the freezer for a couple weeks before it starts to get all frosty and nasty. It doesn't freeze super long, but you can make a bunch like this and freeze it and use it a couple weeks later. So I'm going to turn this all into little nests, and then we're done with our homemade pasta. You can see I got 12 very similarly sized bundles of pasta here. One for a preemie course, two for an entree. To cook them, you just get a pot of boiling water with some salt in it, drop these in there, stir them around. It'll take maybe 2.5 minutes to cook. They'll float a little bit. It doesn't take long at all, not near as long as dried pasta. And you don't want to overcook it or you'll end up with a pile of mush. So if you're enjoying this and you want to see me do other things with pasta, drop it in the comments below. I can show you how to make ravioli in the future if you want. The world is endless when it comes to pasta. Thanks for tuning in to Cooking at Nan with Glaj. We'll catch you next time.